Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jenny, and I'll be facilitating today's event. Today, I'm joined by Helen, Glenn, Gemma, and Tina. And just before we get started, I just want to go through some housekeeping. So we ask that you keep your cameras and your microphones off. The event will be recorded, and the slides will be available on the REC portal. We will be using Slido. The QR code is on the screen now, and I'll also pop a link in the chat. And there'll be opportunities for a Q&A throughout. So if you have any questions at any point, just type it into Slido. I'll just leave that on the screen there while people join. And there's a link in the chat now. While people are just signing into that, I'll share the agenda for today and I'll hand over to Tina for an introduction.
Thanks ever so much, Jenny. So thank you for attending today's webinar on the new change improvements. Today, we will recap on some of the points we shared at the Change Process Improvements Workshop on the 4th of October. The changes that we'll take you through are simple and effective. They are designed to increase engagement, ensure we have sound solutions to progress through to change proposals. And at the end of each of the sections that you've got here, which is Glenn will take us through the change improvements, Helen will take us through the high-level change process, and Gemma will take us through documentation review. So at the end of each of those sections, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. And then finally, at the end, we'll have a roundup for any other general Q&As as well. So I will hand over to Glenn, and he can take us through the change improvements.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, we'll go through some of the things we've been doing in the last since October, since we last spoke to you again at the last webinar. So if you want to go on to the first slide, Jenny. So this is a recap on what we both said to you in October. So why change improvements were needed. So we listened to your feedback throughout the last since the REC's gone live and what's not worked quite well in the change process. People found the change process was long. Material was duplicated, and Gemma will later what we've done to improve that. Stakeholder engagement was often missing. People didn't have a chance, and some of the improvements that we'll talk about today will show how we've improved that. The membership and the role of the expert groups, committees, and change panel was inconsistent. They didn't all have the same ability to take part. So we've made some changes to that, which we'll come on to. And we've had some solutions and CPs that needed to be reworked, and the changes that we're hoping to bring in will change some of that as well. And it was perceived that changes went into a black hole, and some of the stats we'll see later on from Helen will show you how that's improved as well. So Jenny, we're going to go on to the next slide. So what have we done? So we've established a change improvement project about a year ago now to understand what all these issues are and to create proper solutions to resolve them. We created a task force of a few of us that worked on this for last year, and we were looking at not only the changes to the change process, but also to clear the backlog of changes that we've had since go live. And again, you'll hear some more stats on that later on. So we reviewed the process involving all the changes, including the documentation, all our guidance, and how we engage with you and everyone else that's interested in the changes to the REC. We made a review of Schedule 5, which is the change schedule, and we have proposed some amendments under a change proposal that's out at the moment, which is R0167, and we'll touch on that in a minute. And we've mapped the whole change process and identified improvements where that can be made, and Helen will take you through those later today. We've used the task force and some of the backlog of changes also to test some of our thoughts in a sandbox type environment, so that we can check our proposed amendments work and that they are effective. and you may have seen some of those and been part of some of those engagements in the last few months. And we've engaged directly with parties and stakeholders to check that what we're doing is fit for purpose. So we've had some one-to-one sessions with parties that are showing interest, and we've talked to those that have given us feedback along the way. And the one thing we've done in the last month is create a new change issues group that sits alongside the REC issues group as well, to try and improve the engagement and getting people involved. And we'll talk again a little bit more about that in a second. So Jen, if you'd like to move on. So I mentioned R167, that's out at the moment as a change to making some improvements to the change process. So we've made a number of textual changes, but we don't think that they make too much impact on the way parties have to change any processes, but we'll come on to that. What we've done is we've enabled issues which have always been part of the REC process to be more prominent in the change process and sit them on alongside and almost equivalent to a change proposal. And so a change or an issue can be raised at the beginning of the process, and that will follow all the way through. We are pushing all the engagement to the front of the process. So where we are asking for people to have their impact assessments, we're asking our service providers to impact, and where we're asking other parts of the code manager to give their impact, that will all be upfront and in transparent to everybody. And we will also take a lot of these issues to the change issues group or other groups that we already have standing to get input from everybody as far and wide as we can. We are removing the preliminary change report because we think this assists with consolidation of the existing change documentation. And as I said, Gemma will take you through that in more detail later. But it does. We had a feedback that our change documentation was complex. There was multiple versions of the same things, and it was difficult to understand which was relevant. So we've moved. Although we changed the naming of the preliminary change report, we will just have one change report going forward. We still have all the detail that you need in there. And we've created flexibility in the change process, enable us to pick and choose where which elements we take along the change process, and that will all be transparent to you for each change. What we have not done is we haven't created more work for proposers. So if you raise an issue at the beginning, once that goes through the process, you will not have to raise a change at the end. I think some confusion on that. An issue will change automatically into a change proposal if that solution requires it to. An issue may not always be resolved by creating a change proposal. It may be changed to guidance, etc. along the line. Our engagement with other service providers and other codes is in there, but it's all up front. So we're not going to make sure we're not removing that. People have thought that perhaps we were, that was not part of the process anymore. It absolutely is, and it's all up front with all the other engagement. And we are not removing any current information that's shared or published in documents. They are just, as I said, into one documentation, and the documentation that makes it easier to access. If you want to go on, please, Jenny. Just a bit more about the change issues group. So the purpose of this is to get as wide engagement as we can into the input of code and issues that were brought up, sort of change and issues that are brought up within the code. They will help us as the code manager to help develop the solutions or resolve issues into other outcomes that may result in updated guidance, for example. The idea is that will support the code manager sharing the best practice from the experts out there in parties being able to dip in and out of the issues that they're interested in and where we need to help. And it provides that engagement route that stakeholders have been asking for direct change process, and that understanding where all the change issues and change proposals are. Our initial thoughts are we will meet monthly as a group Now, that is an open-ended invitation to all parties, and anyone outside of the parties to the REC, subject to the chair's approval. That is only so that if there's anything that is confidential to co-parties, that the chair can ask people to leave. There is no intention to prevent anyone from taking part in this group. But it also will mean, as you have multiple issues at a group, people can come in and out for issues that they're interested in. So we did hold our first meeting on the 6th of June earlier this month, and that was to look at issue 0168, and that was an issue raised by RECO, and that was as well attended. We had 64 people attending to the first issue, which is fabulous. This is the sort of engagement we need, sort of engagement we were lacking in the past. So hopefully that's good signs for the future. And our next meeting will be the 4th of July. We'll publish the agenda next week for that one. It will continue looking at I0168 and then the other issues that we want to bring to that meeting. What it doesn't replace, as I said earlier, is the REC Issues Group. That has been existing for over a year now and is chaired by our operational account managers. And that forum will still continue for operational issues that are raised to the REC, including the data cleansing activities that the RPA bring to it. So that will remain as one of our other existing groups that we can bring things to. So you want to move on to the next slide, Jenny? So what are our next steps? 167 will go to the final change report after this webinar. So we took the opportunity to we had hoped to take it earlier in the week to change panel. We had a slight issue at the end, so we are taking the opportunity to publish that final change report after today's webinar, just in case we have any more feedback, and that will go to REC panel on the 2nd of July for decision. And if that is accepted, we are looking at an extraordinary release for an information on 19th of July, so that parties can take advantage of the efficiencies that brings. We've also made some portal amends, and we're going to do some more. So the portal at the moment has the ability, or will have the ability, to filter between the change register for issues and change proposals. We have already put the issues onto the register alongside change proposals. There is a slight glitch at the moment. Please, we apologise. They do sort in alphabetical order. That will be fixed under very shortly under a release. So they will be in date order, so that you are not missing any gaps. And what that means, as I said earlier, if an issue is raised, and it will keep the same number right through its existence into a change proposal as well, so that there's no ambiguity about where an issue has gone. We will add the new process stages and statuses across the change proposals page, and they will be subject to each individual change, which ones they take. So you'll be able to see exactly from the portal where things are. And at the moment, we have 2 forms on the portal, which where you can either raise an issue or a CP. We don't think we think it's probably necessary to bring that into one. So you can just make one application, and we will, in our verification phase, decide which route that takes. When we'll talk to you about that, if and when that arises. Those of you that were at the last October webinar, we did show a proof of concept of the Change Hub. We have been, at the moment, RECO are not looking to take that forward. And immediately, that may come later down the line, but it won't form part of our initial changes that we had hoped to bring to you. So I think that was my last slide, Jenny. If it is, I think it is. If I've got any questions that particularly come out to you now, I'm happy to take them, or at the end of the presentation when we have a separate section for it.
Thanks, Glenn. I think we just do have one comment at the moment from Paul, and he says, REC Issues Group acknowledge that some REC implementation lead times are too short. Our 0167 does not yet include a standard minimum lead time, e.g. 6 months.
Cool, yeah, we heard your feedback on that before. We will always try to get 6 months when it's a technical change and needs that so that nothing changes there, but it isn't written into hard into the code, because there will be times when we need to make things shorter, but there's also the opportunity for not to go big bang with changes for implementation that isn't overnight, or there's opportunity for derogations if parties can't make that. But yeah, we haven't written that into the code.
Thanks. And we have another question from Molly, and she says, what issue is being discussed at the next issues group? Was it I0168?
So that was at the first issues group. The second issues group will issue the agenda the week before, so that people understand if there's any more issues coming to that group as well. But we will look at I0168 at that group.
Great, thank you, Glenn. I think that's everything for now.
Nick, I'll speak to you later. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Glenn. Hiya, I was just going to talk you through some of the amends that we've made to the change process. If we can just move on, Jenny. Really what I wanted to do, just to set the scene, is just to give you a summary position of where we were and where we are now. So these two graphs here really should show the impact of all the work that we've been doing over the last few months, and the engagement that we've been having and the feedback that we've been taking on. So as of July 2023, we had 138 change proposals on our book. And you can see today that's an increase of just under 50, I think 48. My maths is mathing. So we've got 186 change proposals currently on our book. If we look back to July, we had 52 inactive, and that status was CPs that have been accepted into the process, but they weren't being actively worked at all. If you look at the process now, as we are in June 2024, there are no inactives. We have gone through and we have cleared that pot and moved them into different statuses. So everything has been actively worked and has moved on from that position. The equivalent in June 2024 is an on hold pot, and these are held for a particular reason. So we have 7 in there that are being held because there are impacts by the MHSS programme. And then there is 1 that is on hold because the proposer has asked for it to be on hold. So absolutely nothing that isn't being worked. Back in July, we had 13 that had been withdrawn, and you can see that we've really massively increased that over into June 2024. And I just wanted to give a bit of context as to why that has grown so much. I think there's probably 3 key factors as to why withdrawn has grown. One of them is that we put some of our thinking and the task force work into the test, and we were able actually to bundle some similar CPs together. So you will have seen that, for example, with the S-steps. We had originally 6 CPs that were dealing with STEP, and we actually bundled those up into 2 CPs that we wanted to take. And so as a result of that, we withdrew some. So bundling has caused some to be withdrawn. R0118 had an impact on the withdrawn status as well. 118 was looking at data access. And in July and pre-118, if you wanted access to any data, it meant you had to raise a change proposal to have it. 118 changed the metadata catalogue, removed that, and so as a result of that, we were able to give that data access, but actually withdraw those CPs as well. And then the third sort of part, I think, within that withdrawn was really going back and having a look at those inactive ones and actually pulling out stuff that was either no longer valid, it didn't fit anymore, it had been dealt with somewhere else, or it is something that was coming later down the line. So that's why we've got a bigger pot with withdrawn. You can see that our active in progress ones have nearly doubled as well. And we've got much more that's moving through the processes. So an increase of what we're doing. We rejected 6. So these again were ones that just weren't viable, and we had conversations and they actually ended up being rejected, Code Manager. And then the implementation, you can see that we've increased those as well. So 50 as of July, and you can see that that number that has either been implemented or is to be implemented, it's been approved and we're just waiting. The implementation date has increased up to 85. So overall, I think there's a really good news message in there. We've obviously been measuring the impact of what we've been trying to do with these stats, and sort of we're comfortable that what we're proposing based on this is the right way forward. So if we can just move on to the next slide, Jenny. I just wanted to give you some sort of principles. I want to sort of talk through how change will look going forward. So, and we did discuss this in October last year when we had this webinar then. But we've split it out, and in general there are 7 stages through the change process, and each stage has got a number of actions that we'll take, and we've put some optionality within those so we can remove or add dependent on the nature of the change that we're progressing. The Code Manager will always identify a change plan for each change in the assessment stage, and that is going to be ratified by the change panel, so we're not losing any of the governance that we've got within the process. And that change plan will be clearly communicated to stakeholders so that stakeholders are able to manage manage change within their own businesses and to be able to input it at the correct time. As Glenn mentioned earlier, we're looking at a behavioural shift. So what we're trying to do with the revisions that we've made to the process is to get that engagement up at the front end and to make sure that we're engaging fully and developing solutions that are right, rather than us having to go back and do rework. And we're also looking at reducing burden on parties and on Code Manager as well, all parties within the change process. So we have introduced SMEs within the Code Manager, so subject matter experts. We've obviously brought in the change issues group that Glenn's talked you through, and we're looking to, with the revised documentation, is to give you more transparency of what's happening during each of those stages. So if we move on, let me just talk through. Now, I said there were sort of 7 stages within the process. I'm going to talk through the first 4 stages because we haven't made any amends to the last 3. And the last 3 are vote, appeal and release, and they stay exactly as they are. We haven't made any improvements to those currently, but that's not to say some point in the future we'll go and have a look at them. But really, I just wanted to sort of walk you through those first 4 stages so that you were all clear with how the change process works and how this will work going forward. So we start off with verification, and this is where a proposed amendment is raised by any proposer. And as Glenn mentioned earlier, currently at the moment within the portal, you have the ability to either raise a change or you have the ability to raise an issue. Once we've got implementation of R0167, we will be merging that form together. So there will be one form on the portal, and you will go in and you will tell us what it is that you're proposing to make a change to. The code manager will support that, that submission and will validate it. And by validation, we will be looking to see whether it meets the REC objectives, whether it's in scope of the REC, whether it's being considered elsewhere and therefore shouldn't be considered at this point in time, or whether there's like sufficient detail for us to be able to make a decision on it. And then we will accept or reject it as a result, and there will be engagement with the proposer. So the proposer is always aware of what's happening. We'll also, we've added a stage within there where we're talking to all arms of the code manager. So RTS, who are responsible for technical, RPA, performance assurance, we'll all have a view on that as well to make sure that it is a collaborative and it is like one code manager. We will prioritise the issue once it's been accepted, and we'll assign a lead analyst as we do at the moment. We'll also assign a SME to that. So there's a subject matter expert internally who will be supporting on that change. And that change will be published on the REC portal, and we'll confirm that it's accepted. What we do then, which is different to what we do currently, this is stuff that we already do, but we'll determine what kind of proposal type it is. And this is where we'll make a determination about whether there is a developed solution or not. So where we feel that there is sufficient work that has gone to it beforehand, so whether it's something that's been done separately within work groups, or whether it's something that is very simple and doesn't need that, like the solution is very simple, for example, a housekeeping change, we may well decide that actually we want to treat that as a change proposal, and we will take it straight to the change proposal stage. Where we feel that there isn't sufficient detail and there's not enough developed solution, we will treat it as an issue. And you'll be able to see exactly, we'll have had that conversation with you as a proposer, so you'll know exactly how we're going to be treating it, and you will know within the portal how we were treating it. You will have an R number at the front, as Glenn said, if we're treating it as a change proposal, and there'll be an I number in front of it if we're going to treat it as an issue. So if we go on to the next stage, and this is sort of assessment. And what we're doing here is we're going through and we are triggering anything that we need to be able to get further information on something. So we may well, we will define the solution lead. So that will be between us as the code manager, whether it's something that's very technical and needs to be taken through a technical leg, whether it's something that's performance assurance and RPA may well take the solution lead on it, or whether it's us, we will take the solution lead. That will be clear, that will be visible to you as well, so you'll know who the solution lead is. And we may well then trigger initial assessments, so out to service providers, out to expert groups, just to get initial views on where we're going. So we'll look at the stakeholders that we want to engage, parties, service providers. We'll look at whether we need to have legal, if we're looking at legal drafting, whether we need external SMEs to be able to support on it, what expert groups we would like to be involved with, whether it's something that we'd like to take to the change issues group, whether it's something that would sit in one of our other existing expert groups, for example, MET, TEP. We'll make those kind of decisions there, and we'll also look whether there's any cross-code dependencies, so we're not losing any of that governance within here. And we'll be working out what the change path for that issue proposal should be, so timelines, and we'll get that ratified by the change panel, and then that plan will be published, so again that stakeholders are aware of what we're doing with it. If we don't have a developed solution and we're going to treat it as an issue, we will take it through the definition stage. So if we move on one slide, please, Jenny. The definition stage is sort of our key working and engagement phase. So the code manager will be collating and managing multiple parties to provide information so that we've got a fully realised solution. So we'll be looking things like technical, benefits, costs, impacts. These are all these things that come out of there. And we will refine that, send that through. We will trigger off any impact assessments that we want, and we'll get to the end of that stage where we have decided that we have got a refined solution, and we're comfortable then to actually move that into a change proposal. So you as the proposer, if you've raised something and it needed solution development, so it's been treated as an issue, at the point where we're comfortable and everybody's agreed and we've got a refined solution that people are happy to take forward, we will then transform that into a change proposal. The proposer doesn't have to do anything extra. They don't have to raise it again. What we'll do, if you, for example, if this had been I100, it will then transform into R100. So there is a traceability right the way across the piece. We can see what's happening with it. So once we've got through the definition stage, we've got a refined solution, we're comfortable, everything is now being treated as a change proposal. We'll move on to the next stage. And that's the next slide. Thank you. So here we are with change proposal. So our two legs have joined together again, and the rest of the process is the same now. We're into change proposal world. So the code manager would either have registered that there was a change proposal, or we will have transformed an issue into a change proposal. And then there's some optionality in here. Do we need panel approval? You will know this whether we do or we don't, because we will have published our change plan at the beginning that tells you the steps that we're going to take. So we've tried to sort of like simplify stuff here. If it's a housekeeping, it probably does not need panel approval of the change report. If it's a big technical, very complicated solution, it's very likely that the expert group that is managing and governing that change will want to see it. So this is one of these kind of pieces of optionality, but we'll be really transparent right at the very beginning about how we're intending to do these things. So you'll have an option to see what that looks like. So we will develop the change report. And the change report, Gemma's going to talk through what that documentation looks like after me. But we will do a minded to position, and that would be the equivalent of what you would have seen in a PCR in old money. So new world, you would get a minded to position from the code manager, and the consultation will go out. So you'll have an option to then respond back to the consultation. The code manager will obviously review all of those responses, and we'll respond to them, and we'll collate them, make any amends, any changes as required. And then we will publish the change report, and this will then have the final code manager recommendation. So in old speak, that would have been your final change report. So Gemma will explain how that's growing, and we will then notify stakeholders. So we then move into voting, and I haven't gone through voting, appeal and release with you on slides. Nothing changes, it is as it is. But I think there's one more slide here, Jenny. Okay, this is just to give you a sort of a visual of what it looks like, whether we're treating it as a change or an issue. So you can see that from submission, verification, exactly the same. The code manager will then make a decision about whether we're treating it with a developed solution as an issue or whether we're treating it as a change proposal. If we're treating it as an issue, it will go through solution development and the engagement stages, and will then move into consultation and voting. If it's a change proposal, it should miss those out and it will go straight through to consultation. However, we did want to give you comfort, So in that middle box, you can see we have kept optionality for a change proposal. So if you have, and we have accepted a change proposal and we believe there's a developed solution and we're working it through, and then all of a sudden something appears and there's a different opinion, we've given ourselves the optionality to be able to still go and do some further work, some further impact assessments if we require. What we will never do is move a change proposal back into an issue. So if it's been raised as an R number, it's going to stay an R number, but this just gives comfort that at any point in the process, something changes and we feel the need to do something, we've still got the ability to do that. And I think that is the end of, there you go. Jenny, is there any questions on that, or we can pick up at the end in the general Q&A?
I think we do have a couple of questions at the minute. I think there's one at the moment on, is there a slide summarising the change pipeline that includes a breakdown of both technical and non-technical changes within those figures? Which I don't think we have a slide on it.
I don't have a slide on it. We will be able to go back and look at the types of change within there. So it is something that we can look at and look at publishing. But I don't have the figures to hand currently, I'm afraid.
Right. And we have a question on, if parties disagree that a change does not require panel approval, even if it is a housekeeping change, is that up for discussion?
Sorry, go again with me. If
parties
party
disagree that a change does not require panel approval, even if it is a housekeeping change, is that up for discussion?
Yeah, I think all of it is up for it. We will produce that change plan. If there's anything that comes back on it, obviously we will want to have that discussion. So absolutely, any feedback we will take on board. If somebody's got a valid reason and thinks it's going a different route than it should do, you know, we're all ears. We'd rather hear it than not.
Thanks, Helen. And I think we have a couple of questions on the change issues group and something on consultation responses, but I think we can maybe save those to the end and then we can go through them all together.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Jenny. Are you okay to move to the next slide? Thank you. So yeah, I'll just go through some of the documentation review that we've carried out on the change reports. So as you're probably all aware, the change reports are currently published at key stages of the change process. There's currently 4 reports. That's the initial assessment report, a change proposal plan, a preliminary change report, and a final change report, all of which, if we consolidate them, have an awful lot of duplication in there. So during the review, these have been consolidated with the view to publish this as one change report. That will evolve over time to include the additional information as the issue or the change progresses through the process. So we'll start by having, we will still have the same 4 key publication points and engagement touch points that we have today. So those publication points are a change plan. So this will have the key dates for the change progression, and that's been combined with the existing initial assessment report and the change proposal plan as we know it today. There'll be an impact assessment of a proposed solution. There'll be a publication for the consultation stage and also a final recommendation. If you can just move to the next slide, please, Jenny. So this slide's really just trying to show the 4 publication points of the report, removing the duplication, but clearly showing the extra information that's provided to parties in each publication. So within the proposal plan, the first kind of publication that we published, you will see a document version, the proposed implementation date and approach if we have one at that stage. the responsible committee, change path, priority status and urgency, code manager contact, so who your lead analyst is, your SME, your solution lead, all that kind of stuff. Your background and summary, proposal plan for progression with any associated activities. So whether or not that will be going to a particular issue group, whether it's going to the change issue group, whether it's going to MEP, a theft issue group, it could be any of those. As we move into impact assessment, obviously that report will then grow. And at this point, we'll be able to provide you with a solution overview, a proposed solution, a draft of the legal text, and a summary of the analysis that's already been undertaken. Then we move into consultation. So that will obviously show, as it does today, a summary of the impact assessment activity, whether or not that's service provider or party or neither. It might not have been to an impact assessment. We'll also cover your business case assessment in there, your case for change, and as Helen touched on earlier, the code manager's minded to position before we then progress into a final recommendation, which will show the summary of the consultation responses, details of those responses, any amendments that have been made following the consultation, and then finally the code manager recommendation. So just for clarity, the review hasn't removed any information that we currently provide today. It's just in one document that will evolve over time. And I think I'll hand back to Jenny.
Thanks, Gemma. We do have a few questions at the moment, so we will just go through those now. Let's start at the bottom. So when consultation responses are uploaded to the REC portal, I've struggled to see other non-confidential responses. Can this be addressed, please?
I'd be really keen to understand some examples, because all non-confidential responses should be published alongside the reports and uploaded to the portal. So I'd be keen to understand a little bit more on that.
Yep, Paul, I can see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I raised the point. I've had it on some consultations when I've raised them. The responses haven't necessarily been in a very logical place. So I had some where they were put in a category 3 section rather than against the CP itself. It was quite a struggle to find, and certainly I had some cases where I phoned the REC help desk and I said, oh, I can see my response, I can't see any others, have any others been uploaded? And I was told, yeah, there are others uploaded, but I don't know why they're not showing in that section. So once all the consultations are received, REC produce a summary of all the responses, but prior to the consultation period ending, certainly my experience, I had some cases where I couldn't actually see other responses. Sometimes when I submit a response, I look and see what other people have written first, just to see if there's anything that I think that might influence my decision.
So do you mean your actual upload onto the portal and not the consolidated view that we publish?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I can see my response, but I couldn't see if say, I don't know, a different energy company had submitted a response that's not confidential, I wouldn't be able to view it.
Yeah, and I'm 99% confident that that's a permission thing within the portal. But if you leave that with me, Paul, I'll take that away and I'll double check. I think that's on purpose, if I'm honest.
If it's deliberate, then that explains it. But thanks, Gemma.
Yeah, I'll double check. I'll get back to you on that one.
Thank you. And the next question is, if not already doing so, please can the Change Issues Group discuss all new proposals similar to previous MDB?
I think it's probably more akin to what we did at IREG than MDB, but we would highlight all proposals, whether they're being discussed there or not. There would be an awareness, I think, as a minimum. Paul.
And The next question, I guess, also relating to the change issues group is, does the new change issues group impact the industry consultation process, e.g. making an assumption that it could be sped up, that it could speed up the consultation timeframe?
I think that's the idea. If we have things up front and we've already got people's views, that the consultation then may only progress at the end at the minimum that we can do, but they'll be on a case by case basis.
Thanks, Glenn. And the next question is, could we include timeframes on each of the parts of the process on the slide, e.g. proposal plan, initial assessment, consultation, and final recommendation?
Molly, is that relating to each of the individual slides that we showed for the stages?
It was the slide that Gemma just talked through. I just thought an idea across the top to have, for example, proposal plan, 10 days, consultation. It's a really good refresher, that slide, rather than digging around the rec. So it's for ease, really, selfishly, Helen. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. We can have a look and get that.
Thank you.
And then I guess another question in relation to consultations. I believe links to consultations are not included in the rec portal section for the change proposal it relates to. If so, can the consultation link be added?
Yeah, it sounds sensible. If it's not done like that, we'll check with that and then make sure that it is clear.
And next question is, will the rec portal be kept up to date with milestones for the various issues changes so all parties can see where it's at in the change management cycle?
Yes is the answer to that. We're looking at rec portal at the moment, and we're looking at the change pages. Currently, if you have a look at a consultation, or if you look at a change, within the rec portal, there are a number of chevrons at the top that tell you where we are in the process, and down the left hand side there are stages that it could be within those. We've looked at those, and we are going to make some amends to make that clearer, and to make the milestones top the top much easier, so that you can clearly see what's in each of those, and when we make those amends and do that, we can update you within the bulletin to let you know what that looks like, but we have definitely looked at tweaking that to make it more fit for purpose.
Great, thanks, Helen. And the final, not a question, just a comment. Collaboration and engagement upfront sounds really positive, so thank you. Are there any final sort of questions that anyone has? If they don't want to type it into Slido, they can just raise their hand at this point. Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We hope that you found.
I'm sorry, Jenny. Just might worth saying, if people have got things they want to bring up outside of the meeting to us, please do contact any of us that are on here if you want anything. We're open to people contacting us. Sorry, Jenny.
No problem. Sue,
I think also, sorry, I'm jumping in front of Sue, just to speak to your OEM as well. I think most people know who their OEM is, so if you've got any questions from that perspective, just give them a call or drop them an email. Sorry, Sue.
Oh, it's all right, Paul. Just jump in. I was just going to say, really well done to the team, because really listen to feedback. There's more engagement now up front, which sounds great, because you're talking about things like expert groups and collaboration, and there will be improvements to industry for this, and that will mean ultimately consumers will get helped, which is really good, and that's what we all want. So thanks for that, guys.
Thanks, Sue. And Paul, I can see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I was going to just echo what Sue said. We certainly as a company, we've been lobbying for a long time to have like the issues group and the change group. So it's really good to see those. The more engagement that we can have, the better. Some of the other, if you look at some of the other industry codes, for instance, you could take Alexon as an example. There are working groups there that people can join. Whereas, it'd be great if it was more open for all the changes. If a particular party wished to contribute to the debate on a particular change on the group rather than a specific expert panel would be really useful. I think the other thing that was really positive as well is when Helen showed the slide where the large backlog of changes has been addressed. That's really positive.
Thank you for that, Paul. Is there anything else anyone wishes to raise before we say goodbye? Great. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and we hope that you found this session useful. Just before you go, we do ask that you complete the feedback form because it helps us understand what we've done well and what we can do to improve in the future. Thank you, everyone.